Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. My name is Lorena van de Kolk. I'm managing partner at Schutelaar, the Agency for a Healthy World, where we focus on sustainability and reconnecting business with society. It is a pleasure to moderate today's session. This event is hosted by MEPs Christine Schneider and Esther Herranz García. They will be here with us in a minute, whom we warmly thank for convening this timely debate. As many of you know, just last Thursday, the Parliament and Council reached a provisional agreement on a new EU wine package, easing challenges for producers and opening opportunities for the sectors. With MEP Esther Herranz García as rapporteur, this makes today's exchange particularly relevant. Wine has always held a special place in Europe, culturally, economically, socially. It shapes regional identity, supports rural livelihoods and tourism, and is deeply rooted in our traditions. Yet, in recent years, public conversation has increasingly framed wine through the lens of health risk alone. The goal of today's European Food Forum debate is to broaden that conversation, to reflect on wine as part of Europe's heritage and economy while acknowledging evolving health, expectations, and consumption trends. Over the next 2 hours, we will explore wine's role in sustainability, biodiversity, economic resilience, culture, science, and health. Our diverse panel brings expertise from policy, research, history. Sorry, I had to switch. So I was saying that today we have a diverse panel that brings expertise from policy, research, history, nutrition, and industry. And I'm delighted to guide this discussion. We will conclude with a Q&A session open to the room where all speakers will join the exchange. So please keep your reflections and questions ready. Thank you again for being here. Let's begin an open, evidence-based, and constructive conversation. Before we start, I would like to take this brief moment to introduce also the European Food Forum for those that do not know entirely about this platform. So the European Food Forum is an independent, politically led, non-partisan, multi-stakeholder forum founded and governed by elected members of the European Parliament. The European Food Forum does not itself take positions on any specific policy issues, but of course, joins the conversation and runs these times of debate where everyone is invited. I have also a few rules on the Q&A session, but also on how we are going to develop this meeting today. So as I mentioned, the debate is open to every participant, also the ones following us online, but also you here can ask questions, either raising your hands or using the chat online. And please don't be shy. We really need you today to spark this conversation. As mentioned, there will be a Q&A at the end of each session. Every panel speakers will allow questions and they will be happy to answer your questions. The questions, though, should not be longer than 1 minute. So please keep it clear and concise so we can ask as many questions as possible. The event will be recorded, so you can watch it again or send it to friends or people that could not join us today. And there will be also among us some journalists and the press, so also feel free to read articles or join that conversation. It's a 2 hours event, very intense. We have many guests and speakers, so I would like to kindly invite the speakers to be on time and don't make me the bad person here to cut everyone. So without further ado, I would like to start. So maybe, I would like to give the floor to Ms. Herranz to open the event.
Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to be here today after the agreement we had got several days, last Thursday, on the wine package. You know, it was a very important issue here in the Parliament because of the crisis of the sector. We are talking about culture, we are talking about tradition, we are talking about the way of life in Europe. And it was very important for the Parliament to get an agreement, but not every agreement that could be possible. We are looking for opportunity for the future for this sector, which is important. Now we are talking today. We are talking today about what will be our lives without wine. We are talking about a future without wine. And we hope that never happens this. I want to hear you and the opinions you have about the future for the wine sector in Europe, the future for our relationship with the other regions of the world, and with the relationship we have to have with the wine in our society for the future. So thank you for organizing this debate this afternoon. And thank you for your opinions that will be useful for the next reform on the CAP, that will be the time on the common organization of market in the aspect that has to be with the wine. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for this passionate introduction, and we look forward to today and to hear all these different opinions, the 360 view of all stakeholders at this table. So I would like to start or set the scene with the EU wine in the global context. And we have a video from John Barker, Director General of International Organization of Wine and Wine. So let's listen to the video.
Good morning, everyone, and greetings on behalf of the International Organization of Vine and Wine, the OIV. The OIV is the global reference organization for the vine and wine sector, and I'm delighted to be able to offer a few words on behalf of the OIV on EU wine in the global context. The EU as a bloc is the global leader in the world of wine. It produces 60% of total wine production, 48% of wine consumption, 68% of global trade in wine by volume, and 75% by value. This is an extraordinary strength, but it also means that the challenges facing the global wine sector resonate very strongly in this region. Right now, the wine sector is being impacted by three forces. First, climate change. OIV preliminary data shows that the 2025 harvest of 232 million hectolitres will be the third consecutive year of low global production due primarily to climate change effects, heat, drought, fires, extreme weather events, and subsequent disease pressures. These impacts are felt strongly here due to the continental geography of Europe, and they're exacerbated by elements such as water availability. Climate change will affect all areas of production and consumption. It is a major threat, but it will also present opportunities to use resources more efficiently, to explore new techniques, new regions and varieties, or even to rediscover some that we've left behind. In the OIV, we're very focused on resilience, on adaptation, and on sustainability in the face of climate change, as everyone engaged in the wine sector should be. In this, we're supported by our members and by experts from around the world, because the answers will be found through science and through innovation. Here in the EU, you have a great asset in the strong research institutions and networks that support the wine sector, and that is something that really deserves recognition. The second element is the evolution of consumer behaviours, attitudes, and influences. OIV data shows that global consumption hit a 60-year low in 2024. This is not simply a story of deconsumption by today's younger generations. Wine consumption has been declining since 1980 in Europe. Over that same time, it's been compensated by a strong and steady growth in consumption in other countries such as USA, Canada, United Kingdom, Japan, and more recently, China. The key shift in the last few years has been a downturn in the major growth markets, particularly USA and China, on top of stable or declining consumption in the traditional wine countries here in the EU. Economic factors are an important reason for the shift in recent years. Wine is a discretionary product, for most people at least, and people buy fewer discretionary products when they have less discretionary income to spend. Underlying social factors are also highly significant. The digitization of our everyday lives and interactions, generational changes, competition from other products, changing perspectives and policies around health, well-being and sustainability, different ways of socializing. These are all affecting consumer choices as to when, what and how they consume wine. Social changes affecting consumer taste is nothing new, and let's not forget in the midst of all of this that people still like wine. Wine is a fundamentally human product with many characteristics that consumers enjoy and value. The challenge and the opportunity for wine producers is to understand a new generation of consumers and to communicate with them, to reach them on their terms and to find the points of human connection between this historical product and the needs and concerns of today's consumers. The third key factor is uncertainty in the global geopolitical and trading environment. Trade is the lifeblood of wine, with 47% of all wine being consumed outside the country of origin. Uncertainty has been a factor since COVID and war upset international trade flows. The tariffs imposed by the US administration will impact trade, even if today we don't know how much, for how long, or what the spillover effects will be on other markets. The trade data from the first half of 2025 tells us a number of interesting and slightly unexpected things. The total volume of trade is down, but this may have more to do with limited supply of in-demand wine styles than with declining consumption. Why do we say that? Because average prices have actually increased, and if demand was decreasing faster than supply, we would expect to see the opposite. Perhaps the most interesting fact is that imports into the USA have grown in volume in the first half of the year. We can speculate that this is probably because of importers stocking up before tariffs come into full effect, and it will be interesting to see the data for the second half of the year. But the global picture is quite heterogeneous, and we know that some regions and styles are struggling with oversupply, while others have a more balanced situation. In the OIV, we're part of the global rules-based system that has been so important to the wine sector. We support trade with international statistics, standards, recommendations, and data. Under our new strategic plan, we will be introducing a new expert group to focus specifically on trade. Multilateral cooperation is something that all countries must support for the good of the wine sector. To conclude, there's a real and urgent challenge of adaptation ahead of us. This is not an easy moment. This will take research, experimentation, innovation, and investment focused on resilience, on sustainability, on the consumer, on the market. The EU and its member states have great resources and capacity to show leadership in these areas, and your efforts will be multiplied by working with other countries who share the same interest in ensuring a secure future for wine, both within the OIV and elsewhere. So let's be confident in the future of a product that has been able to adapt for more than 8,000 years, that is enjoyed in nearly 200 countries around the world, that is a cultural asset that enriches our lives when enjoyed in moderation. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this introduction and setting the scene. Before we move to the next panel, I would like also to welcome MEP Raúl de la Hoz Quintana, who's welcoming us, who's also joining the conversation. Welcome. And then we can move on to the next panel because we have two speakers here. And this section is very special. We are going to discuss about wine and sustainability. And I would like to start with Mr. Riccardo Ricci Curbastro, President of European Federation of Wines. And I have two questions in one. So what is the key challenge for the wine sector to become more sustainable? And what are the geographical indication wines doing to tackle this sustainability challenge?
Thank you. I will start from the words of Mr. Barker when he was saying that wine is a discretionary product. Analyze the way you drink wine, and you will discover that it's not always a discretionary product. It can be discretionary in other cultures, on foreign markets, but it's part of our culture. So I would like to invite you also to look at the problem of sustainability and wine, starting with your glass of wine and using it as a lens to widen your angle of view. We discuss about wine recently. We have been discussing about wine, talking about wine crisis, wine and alcohol, and so on. Let's widen a little bit our point of view. Let's do a little more historical research. Let's complete our culture about wine. And we will discover that sustainability in the wine sector is already there, that sustainability is not just solving environmental problems. It's part of it. It's one of the pillars. But we can talk about social and economical aspect, the two other pillars of sustainability. We will discover that vineyards are not only agricultural plots. In many situations, they are even landscape protected by the UNESCO heritage system. What it means, behind that glass of wine, we have people working on wine. We have wine regions, often regions that have no other opportunities of producing. When we talk about GI wines, we are talking exactly about regions where in most situations we have no other crops able to grow where we produce our wines. And again, we will discover that many appellations through Europe are working on these matters. I can, for example, say that in Burgundy, there is a huge program for restoring the dry stones walls. It looks like, why should you do that? Now we can buy new tractors and we can jump over the walls. But the walls are natural corridors for animals, natural refuge for vegetation, and so on. And if we go on, we will see that most of our wine regions are working on saving water. Saving water is not just a problem of dryness coming up, but it's also something that will be more and more necessary because we are facing years where drought are coming, and on the other side, when we have over raining. Then we see that there is a lot of work on the soil quality, on the soil life. This is very important because we don't recently discovered, we know that as viticulture and producers, we know that the life in the soil is the starting point for great quality wines. Resilient varieties, I think this will be your focus. And then I can make a lot of examples, lighter bottles or recycling the pomaces like they're doing in Champagne. There is a lot of work on the social aspects. Can you imagine the Douro Valley without viticulture? Can you imagine what is the value of the economy that is behind Porto? If you consider the number of bottles, it could be very little economy. But what it means in terms of tourism, people coming in, opportunities of life for people that is not producing wine. This is what I'm saying. If we consider the sustainability, we have to consider that it's a wider argument than just a single glass of wine. The Mosel, can you imagine the Mosel without vineyards? And the people navigating the river without looking at the vineyards? It's difficult to imagine it. Can you imagine some Spanish regions without viticulture? The dryness would transform them probably in deserts. And entire local economies should be developed, should be helped for living in those areas if there is no wine production. This is the true aspect, I think, about sustainability. Then I can make you a long list of projects about sustainability that are held in Europe, and that were organized by the wine producers. Just to let you know, for example, in Italy, actually 20% of the wine production is sustainable certified with a standard that was created by the producers. So it's not something that has been given us from local authorities, national authorities, European authorities. It's something that grows from the bottom, because the resilience, the sustainable way of working of viticulture, it's connected with, let's think about what will happen tomorrow. When we plant a vineyard, we always think about what will happen in 10 years, not what will happen tomorrow. It's not like seeding barley or wheat. It's something completely different. When we plant a vineyard, we think I will get on the market with my wine in the next 10 years. And we have a focus, a way of looking forward that is, I think, unusual in any other agricultural crop. Wine tourism. Can you imagine the discussions? Oh, think about the discussions about over-tourism in our main touristic cities. This is happening in Italy, but not only in Italy. Everywhere we are discussing about, we have over-tourism. We can solve a problem to the other ones with tourism, and tourism in the wine regions is growing daily by daily. And again, it's a good opportunity for creating sustainability, not only for the social aspect. I'm not only thinking about the social pillar, but also because behind this economy, we can vehiculate to those visiting our areas this culture, our culture, the culture about wine. And getting back to where I started, wine is not just alcohol. Wine is much more than alcohol. Wine contains a little bit of alcohol. We must have respect for it. We must drink wine in moderation, but I cannot imagine our life without wine. And I hope that this is the same that will touch your imagination. When I describe sustainability to the consumers, I always say, in sustainability, you will find answers to any question you have about the way wine is produced. Because you might be focusing on social aspects, the way we produce, the way we treat the people working, the way we pay them, and so on and so on, security, safety on work. You may focusing on the environmental pillar, and then we talk about organic, or we talk about other technical systems that now are helping us in improving our production. Or on the other side, you will discover that wine is a sustainable economic way to maintain viticulture and to keep people living in the wine regions. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this lovely introduction and answering this question. I don't think I've ever seen a definition of sustainability so beautifully put from all angles. So thank you so much. I think I already have some questions, but I will leave the audience to ask those questions for you. I would like to move on to Professor Oliver Trapp, Head of Institute for Grapevine Breeding, Julius Kuhn. Yes, I have a question for you. So because we were talking, or Mr. Ricardo in his introduction already mentioned this new variety. So your specialty is more marketing this new variety with new names as varietal wines. It's quite difficult from what we understood. So how can these new varieties be marketed more efficiently? And how can genome editing be used in grapevine breeding? Lots of difficult questions, but the floor is yours now.
Yes, thank you very much. So I prepared a few slides actually in order to set the scene, basically.
Yes, just use next slide whenever you want to move so the colleagues can change it.
Yes, thank you. So I will talk a bit about the potential of using disease-resistant grapevine varieties for the sustainability in viticulture. And this is mostly focused on disease resistance. As I guess most of you are aware, in viticulture, we need a substantial amount of the fungicides used in agriculture. So I'm coming from a federal German institute for grapevine breeding, Gallweiler-Hof, and in Germany, we are actually in a very unique position to talk about these disease-resistant grapevine varieties. Next slide, please. Because we can look back at around 100 years of history and continuous grapevine breeding in our country. And we were already 100 years ago focused on breeding for resistance. So over time, we developed many varieties, which are now called also PV varieties. And due to the experience in breeding, we also have an extensive experience in cultivating these varieties and can very well say, what can they do? What is their potential for viticulture? So just to say that the aim of grapevine breeding in general and all the breeding programs is to develop new, disease-resistant, also climate-adapted grapevine varieties with high wine quality. So, or in short, it's basically to give the wine grower options to deal with the current challenges in viticulture, which were already mentioned by the speakers before me. Next slide. When we're developing a new variety, we are actually going through a very long process and have breeding lines which are being very thoroughly evaluated. In our case, it's a 4-step program with different priorities. I won't go into detail. I just want to point out that it takes around 25 years from crossing until we have a new variety onto the market. But this is time that the breeders actually need to take in order to make sure that a variety is at least as good as the traditional ones which are on the market right now, which everybody loves. Next slide, please. And as we have around 40 registered varieties in Germany, we already know what they can do in terms of disease resistance. So on the left side, so this is taken from a publication, on the left side, you see the resistance or the incidence of downy mildew in the year 2021, a year with extreme downy mildew pressure in German vineyards. So on the right side, inside the box, these are the traditional varieties. And on the left side, you can see the PV varieties. And in the middle is the first generation of PV varieties. So on first glance, the bars don't look very different between that first generation of PV varieties and the traditional ones. However, the number of sprays is what's important. So the same amount or same degree of health you can get in a PV variety like Cabernet Blanc after 4 times spraying compared to a Riesling, which was sprayed 14 times. So this means we can save 2/3 of the fungicides and still have a high quality product. In terms of powdery mildew, it's very similar. And if you look on the left side, the newer, stronger PV cultivars, they're even able to save more fungicides. Actually, in 2021, they worked even without treatments. But without treatments, and I want to state that quite firmly, is only something you should do in research. Next slide, please. Because these pathogens that we have also adapt. They can adapt, and this may lead to resistance-breaking strains, and then they might overcome the biological resistances of these disease-resistant varieties. This does not come as a surprise. We constantly see this in other crops, and it has also happened in German vineyards for some of our first-generation PV varieties. So that's why it needs to be clear that always a minimal amount of plant protection is necessary. In case one of these strains develops, the plant protection products will kill them before they can manifest in the vineyards. And only that's the way to really deal sustainably with these new varieties. But this in turn also means that zero spray vineyards are not sustainable because it might work a few years, but afterwards the resistance will be broken and you need to spray more. Next slide, please. So it looks quite good in terms of disease resistance. And we also know, due to several research projects, that the quality, if given to consumers in blind tastings, is actually comparable between disease-resistant varieties and traditional varieties. So there's no significant difference. which is very good to see because there's often the prejudice around that these new varieties are not as good as the traditional ones that we have. So next slide. The potential of the new disease-resistant varieties is actually quite big for sustainable viticulture. We can reduce the amount of fungicides used by more than 80% without having any compromises in wine quality. And additionally, we're also able to adapt to the changing climatic conditions. This is also possible. So disease-resistant varieties are a way to face the challenges of today's viticulture. And it will help us protect and save the vineyards, the viticultural landscape, and also our cultural heritage, because especially in the regions mentioned, a world without wine, that's somehow unimaginable. So thank you very much. And if there's still time, I'd like to address the question of marketing, because these new varieties always come with a new name, and the consumers, they're usually looking for varieties with a name that they already know. That's one of the most important things when buying new wines or wines. So how can these new varieties be actually put onto the market? I guess many of you don't or have never heard of these varieties before. Well, I think a first step for a wine grower is to plant them and use them in blends. So blending is a way to more or less get some experience with these new varieties, because a new variety, you need to get experience in the cellar, in the vineyards, how to deal with them. And if you can use them in blends, maybe in varietal blends as an addition to a specific variety, or even in blends with fantasy names, that's a way to market. And we see that especially blending works very well. Or sparkling wines, for example, where usually the variety is not on the bottle, is also a way to start with these new disease-resistant varieties. So there are options, but marketing is really the most difficult part when dealing with these new disease-resistant varieties.
Thank you. That was a good answer in a nutshell. So I would like now to give the opportunity to participants here or online if they have any questions for our two panelists. Just raise your hand. Don't be shy. Yes, please.
If I come later, I want to start. I'm so sorry that I was too late, but the traffic from Germany was completely horrible, and I had a very important meeting in the morning in my constituency. So I'm so sorry that I'm too late, and I'm very happy that to have at first the possibility to start the week again with President Curbastro, because last week we started also together in a wine event in Germany, and it was a very good week last week for me. So I hope this would be also a very good week. My team knows it because I have a trilogue the same than Esther in a very important file, and it was great. And I'm very happy that Professor Trapp from my constituency is here today. And one question for him, because I know the discussions about the new variety and sustainability, and all the questions about what can we do to make consumer more informed, and also to promote on the one side our very topic and important wines in our wine culture, but also to look how we can use new scientific approach in the conversation.
Yeah, that's a very good question. I mean, we definitely need to teach the consumers about the benefits that these new varieties have. So to really tell them that the production of the wine is more sustainable. I mean, all these sustainability certificates have already been mentioned, that they were coming from the producers actually. So there is a demand by the consumers. We more or less just need to show them that these disease-resistant varieties can actually fulfill their demand, together with all the other like management practices, which can give more sustainability in the production. So that's one of the things we definitely need to do. How to do it? That is not so easy, because The communication is quite difficult because the consumers mostly buy wines in the supermarkets, and that's quite hard to tell them about that. It works very well if the consumers go to the wine growers and the wine growers informs them. So yeah, what can we do? I think we need to use the options that we have nowadays, like online databases, social media, just to more or less show the consumers there are also new alternatives, new options when you're going to buy wine, and they were actually produced more sustainably.
Great, thank you so much. Any other question, Pauline?
Hi, thank you. I had a question for Ricardo. You mentioned the classification at the UNESCO for some of the vineyards, like my origin in Burgundy and Champagne and etc. Do you think, like, how much would you like those initiatives to be seen in other regions? Do you think it's something that we should invest on those recognition as a UNESCO patrimoine? And like,
again, getting back to the holistic view, they can help. We cannot approach it everywhere. For example, if I think about my country, we have already some landscapes that are protected. Other ones are more difficult because Italy is a small country, and sometimes viticulture is sharing the space with industry and other human activities. So it's not always easy to imagine a landscape that is only viticulture, for example, in Italy. But I think that everything is helping. Discussion about resistant varieties. If I say to the consumer that I've been reducing the number of spraying, it's already an information. If I add that in this way, my employers were able to get their weekend at home instead of being on a tractor spraying in the vineyards, it's a second information. And it's very important because we are touching something that we all know. We like to be at home during weekend. So it's, and usually this doesn't happen during the growing season in viticulture. So I believe that we must use all the informations from UNESCO to the number of spraying, from dryness problems, solution that we can have from rootstock and so on and so on. Everything that is in the frame of sustainability, it's an answer.
Thank you so much. A very quick question, very quick.
At the top, you were talking about educating the consumer, but first of all, it's necessary to educate the producers. I'm producers here in Belgium. We plant only peewee, and a large part of the winemakers in Belgium are planting only peewee for still wine, not for sparkling. But a lot of guys are just focused on France vineyards, and the French, they don't care about peewee. They don't know, they don't care. They start slightly, but they don't understand the impact of spraying, the different period for working. And it's very important to develop the knowledge for producer, first of all, I believe.
Yes, you're very right. I mean, after the 25 years of breeding, there's actually still a lot that we don't know about these new varieties, like how do they behave in the cellar after, or what's the outcome of different enological treatments. This is definitely something where I also see the breeders involved in trying to have new varieties and hand out some kind of manual on how to work with them. I completely agree with you. I think that is very important. But then again, I also see that we should use the methods that we have online, maybe to connect the different producers and try to get them to share their experiences with each other. And just that way, I think we can really tackle these challenges in the future.
Thank you so much. I think our panelists deserve a round of applause. So thank you so much, Ricardo and Oliver. Thank you. And now we're moving on to the next panel discussion, the social fabric of wine. And I have two special speakers, Professor Peter Scholiers and Eric Bosman. So Professor, you are a contemporary professor of history at the Vrije University of Brussels, and you are going to give us a short introduction of the history of wine. Please, the floor is yours. I think you have a presentation. No? Okay.
No. Thank you for inviting me here. I feel a bit uneasy in this circle because the organizers asked me to summarize the history of wine in 5 minutes. So this is totally impossible. So what I did is to think of 10 theses that I want to share with you, and I hope to be able to give a very short survey of the history of wine that goes beyond Wikipedia knowledge. First thesis. Non-wine producing countries, and I label them beer or gin countries, have gradually adopted the wine culture of wine producing countries. This is not self-evident, is it? It's started many centuries ago, but as one example to show the importance, I can refer to the Amsterdam trade between Bordeaux region and the Low Countries, especially Amsterdam, starting in the late 16th century, developing in the 17th and the 18th century, and becoming really important. So, and this trade, as everybody knows, intensified since then. Second thesis. The beer gin countries used wine to emphasize social differences. This is very important. I'm talking about the past because I will come to the present within a second. And wine was drunk by the elite, particularly in the 19th century with the coming of the industrial society, when wine was part of everyday life for the elite. And one example here is that the British, England started the Industrial Revolution, as everybody knows. Champagne became one of the main drinks in England in the late 18th and throughout the 19th century, saving actually the French champagne production. Without the British, there would not have been champagne nowadays. It's debatable, I know this, but anyway. In all of Europe also. Look at that one, if you want to be. Yeah. I don't know. You don't care. This is true. In all of Europe, wine became the subject of experts and connoisseurs, both producers and consumers, and that's important, who wrote treatises on wine, which included the classification, the characteristics, and the prices. And that's really important. It's not only producers who talked about wine, they did, but also other people, and especially consumers who are connoisseurs. Fourth thesis. However, also traders, and especially traders mainly, but also medical doctors, scientists, and legislators also started discussing wine. And I can illustrate the latter by France in 1905 with the appearance of the famous Appellation d'origine contrôlée. That was an example for EU legislation a couple of decades later. So this means that wine in Europe implied the whole of society, not just the elite. And this is something new in the late 19th, early 20th century. This is 5. By the end of the 19th century, the teetotaling movement influenced alcohol consumption. Teetotaling means abstinence of wine and of alcohol, not necessarily wine, but of alcohol, which in some countries affected the wine consumption, as in Great Britain or Scandinavian countries, where the late 19th century, the decrease of the wine consumption is very clear. While in other countries, wine was precisely seen as a healthy drink, taken moderately, as in my country, as in Belgium. And there you see the opposite going on, that there is an increasing wine consumption in the late 19th and the early 20th century. This is 6, after 1918, and especially 1945, purchasing power of the so-called lower classes grows gradually, while growing production and intensified trade of wine lowered its price. So wine became affordable. For example, in the 1960s, late 1960s, cheap wine from Algeria, not France, because there was a civil war going on, was very popular among working classes of Northern Europe. This is 7. Actually, what I'm saying is that there is a process of democratization going on. I don't like to use the word democratization in this context, but wine is becoming more affordable. Not the rich Bordeaux wines, but the ordinary wines coming from the south of France, the Languedoc region, for instance, and Algeria. This is 7. Since the 1970s, a crisis in wine-producing countries emerged due to the import of wine from outside Europe, which led to insistent concerns in Europe about quality over quantity. Actually, what I'm saying is that there is this slow transformation of wine-producing countries, massive wine-producing countries. The Languedoc is a very good example, but not just there, towards more qualitative wines. This is 8. Wine culture, or the knowledge of wine, spread throughout all social classes, but there is a clear limitation regarding age, gender, urban-rural divides, and other divisions. The typical wine drinker in the 1970s, and perhaps also today, but I'm not sure about today, I'm an historian, is a man in his 40s, an urban dweller, and rather well off, who has the purchasing power to be a connoisseur in wine. This is 9. The beer gin countries almost, and I stress the word almost, became wine countries and vice versa in the 1990s. And this is nicely illustrated by FAO statistics, where you can see the availability of wine, not the consumption of wine, which is the difference. The availability of wine in northern beer producing countries and wine producing countries, that there is this happening, that Belgium, the Netherlands, Scandinavian countries, England, increasing of wine, whereas the Southern European countries, there is a clear decreasing of wine and an increasing of beer consumption. Last thesis, 10, and this is not my expertise. I have other people around me who are. Since the 2000s, there is a debate going on that surely considers health issues. The price formation in a very competitive world, which is, I'm not an expert in production side, I'm an historian of consumption side, but I know that price is really important, and I realized that in the late 1990s, there is this huge transformation in wine producing countries and price formation going on with this huge competition throughout the world. And finally, that is not mentioned yet, but it's really important, I think. Finally, the success of beer, non-alcoholic beer. I don't know whether you drink this, but the taste of it, I'm not a beer drinker, but seemingly the taste of this beer without alcohol is improved a lot. But
there's a reason why you don't drink beer.
But then again, you have these soft drink producers who have a huge marketing branch behind them and produce these images that are very, very addressed to younger consumers and not to the male 40-year-old well-off consumer, sorry. Voila, that's what I wanted to say. I'm very sorry if this is some kicking open doors, but actually what was asked to me was.
I think
Impossible.
I think you made the impossible possible. So thank you for so much for wrapping up and putting everything together in your 10 points. I would like to give now the floor to Eric Bosman, a Belgian sommelier and author and cultural commentator. So please, the floor is yours. I have though one question, and I think everyone has mentioned it or talked about it. What is a world without wine? And is it worth living? So the floor is yours.
So first of all, thank you to invite me. I don't understand already why I'm there. Because there are so many scientists and I'm just a saltimbanque, a kind of clown. And but I'm a one specialist, that's true. First of all, I want to say something and come back to all the point before. We are a beer and gin drinkers country, but we restart to be a wine producer, very small one, just at the same level than Luxembourg in terms of hectares, lower in terms of production, but it's not so far. And things are changing very fast. It's incredible. 30 years ago, when I started in my career, 35 years ago, when I started in my career in sommelier, I have to drive a bottle of wine to Paris for a TV show, and I take with a Belgian wine, and they try to kill me because they want to shoot me out because the wine was so disgusting. And no, we could be proud about the wine we produced. We make some mistake as a new country. We are too focused on France, and we maybe have to focus on more in Germany. Mosel wine are the example for us, but we work with PUE, we work on the sensibility, we develop at the same time ecotourism, and we can try to be better than our beautiful neighbors and don't make the same stupid mistake. Also, want to just focus on something. The wine crisis for now, I believe, is always the same thing. The things are not regular, they're going like that. And the crisis for now is also coming from something very strange. The increasing of the quality, the wine quality, develop the increasing of the wine business. We were talking about a complete saying about wine. The way to talk about the wine is more and more complex, and we lose the clients. We're stupid. We're using stupid words to keep the power for us. And everybody is concerned. Producer, journalist, wine expert, blah, blah, blah expert, bullshit experts, and WSET and things like that, master wine. And that guys are killing the wine. They're not talking about pleasure. They're just talking about technical figures. And that's boring. That's really boring. So I prepare something. Let's start with a simple question. One that might sound dramatic, maybe even ridiculous to some. Would a world without wine be worth living in? At the first, you might love. Of course, life would go on. The sun will still rise, children will still play, and politicians will still lie. But something essential will be missing. Something more profound than just fermented grape juice in a glass, because wine is not fermented grape juice in a glass, it's something more. Wine is not just a drink, it's a language, a culture, a kind of civilization by itself, a way of being. It's memory bottled, culture harvested, time captured, and made liquid. It's a bridge between the earth and the sky, between the human hand and the divine mystery of fermentation. Imagine a world stripped of that. No glasses clicking across a table to mark love, friendship, or peace. No smells of freshly opened Burgundy, to talk to my neighbors, to make your heart skip a beat. No slow swirl of ruby light catching the candle glow, no whispered debates over whether it's gases or sherry, leather or smoke. You know what? Nowhere in our Western world, never does a great love story start from a salad, a poke bowl, and a glass of kombucha. or a cup of matcha flat white. That's a fundamental point. That's very important. You invite me, you have to accept it. What would be left? Water, beer, maybe whiskey, functional liquids. But none that carry the poetry of a vineyard after the rain, or the voice of an old winemaker who still believes that soil remembers every step you've taken on it. A world without wine is a world without stories, without those moments where someone pours you a glass and say, taste this. It's from the year my daughter was born. It's without the joy of discovery, without the gentle intoxication that loosens the tongue and softens the ego enough for truth to emerge. Yes, I suppose you could replace wine with other pleasure, but it will be like replacing music with white noise or conversation with silence. Life would lose its resonance, its little harmonies between the sense and the soul. Wine teaches us patience, to wait for ripeness, to let things mature. It teaches humility, because every vintage reminds us that we control far less than we think. And above all, it teaches us that fleeting, perfect joy of a shared bottle between friends who, for a few hours, feel infinite. Yes, it's possible to live without wine or any alcoholic beverage. I never tried, but I could. Water is a magnificent beverage, but boring, desperately boring. And with water, life will be not longer, but seems so far too long. So yes, a world without wine might survive, but it wouldn't live. And me, I'd rather raise one last glass to what was praised in that final swell of life and toast to the miracle that a few grapes, some yeast, and time can still make us believe in beauty. Cheers.
Thank you so much. This was a very creative answer, and I think you conquered some people here for sure, and maybe also in the audience back home. So any questions to our two panelists? Now is the time. Yes, please.
My name is Carole Brigodeau from Spirits Europe, so enlarging a bit from wine to spirits, but we use some but the same family. Actually, it's specific, maybe a question to Mr. Bushman and to his neighbor. I mean, we are depicting so much about the pleasure and the fact that actually conviviality, social connection in Europe would not be the same without these products. And we are here sitting in the European Parliament. And my question is, what is it we can do to actually gain the battle of moderation against no safe level? What do you think Belgium could do? Because for the moment, it's not exactly in front position for this one. So that's an open question to maybe some of the speakers. So what do you think we're missing? What do you think we're not doing that this baton is creeping in the wrong direction?
I believe that everything is a question of education. Prohibition never works, nowhere in the world. Even if you go to Muslim countries that drink alcohol, Saudi Arabia is one of the largest consumer of Johnny Walker 12 years old in the world. That's a truth. It's not an idea. I used to work in Abu Dhabi, and it's not a problem. That means education is more important than prohibition. It's important to talk about wine, the danger of alcohol, but also the pleasure. And we have to replace pleasure in the center of a lot of things. We are scaring people all the time, and we forgot to tell them that life is dangerous. The first day of your life, you know that you will die. But you can take pleasure during that moment. And alcohol is not meaning be drunk, it's meaning just open your mind. And I don't know the word in English for that, I'm sorry. There is a kind of la physiologie de l'ivresse. The l'ivresse. Be drunk, but not so far. Slightly drunk would change a lot of things. And it's necessary to say, don't drink and drive. Don't drink and leave your home. That's important to be on a social responsibility. But it's ridiculous to make prohibition. It's not a good idea because building wall just give the needs to go through the wall, to the wall.
If I can build on to that, I've got more argument after, but there's an argument for creativity as well. You talked about prohibition not working. What happened in the dry states like Tennessee during prohibition is that they've seen a decrease of patents being recorded for scientific investment and engineering, because when you stop access to alcohol, and again, I'm talking in moderation always, what it also helps is that creativity and that coming together to discuss new ideas. So there's a lot to lose as well, even in progress when you think about it, by imposing prohibition and not educating on moderation.
Yes, please go ahead.
I agree with what you both have said, but I would claim that education is not enough. Information is not enough either. What is moderation? To what extent is someone, it depends on the individual, by all means. But I would also claim the right to be not moderate, the right to be drunk. I would claim that. Why not? If you're driving, it's a different issue. But I know of many.
I can see some very challenging ideas rising. Yes, please.
I would like to remember you that Platone, sitting in the symposium, was drinking. And we still discuss Platone ideas. So moderation is being still able of use your brain for create something great. This is what is moderation. And I believe that Platone is always a good example about how we can manage wine.
Yes, and I think thank you so much for your answer. I think this is a very good next step to our next panel, because we're going to talk about science and health beyond stigma. And I think two professors are waiting online to enlighten us about their studies, but also to talk about moderation. I would like to start with Professor Ramon Estruch, professor at the Barcelona University, member of the board of directors of the Cyber Obesity and Nutrition Institute of Health Carlos III, Government of Spain, and scientific director of the Mediterranean Diet at Foundation Barcelona. Professor, the word is yours, the floor.
Thank you very much for the invitation. May I have the slides, please?
Yes, and please, just a reminder, could you please say next slide so we know when to change?
Okay.
Thank
That's the title is wine, but we have to put wine in the right context. And the right context is a healthy diet like Mediterranean diet. Next slide, please. This is a landmark study that was published some years ago in Circulation. It's a very high topic journal of medicine, and analyze the impact of life factors on longevity. And the study from Harvard colleagues analyzed more than 100,000 subjects followed for 33 years. That is not easy. And they found that there were 5 items that help to live longer. One is do not smoke, and all the people agree with this. Another is to maintain a normal body weight, not to be obese. The third is to follow a healthy diet. I put here the Mediterranean diet pyramid, and we'll speak later on this. and another is to practice exercise and also to drink in moderation. So these 5 factors, next slide please, will help to prolong the life. And if you don't drink, you will reduce the all-cause mortality by 9%, cardiovascular death by 10%, and death of cancer, and this is important because there is a relationship between high alcohol intake and cancer. If you drink moderately, you reduce 9% mortality from cancer. Next slide, please. So the key is these 5 factors, but we believe that you have to put the wine in the right position. The right position is in a healthy diet, like Mediterranean diet. And the keys of Mediterranean diet are extra virgin olive oil, wine, and also whole bread. Next slide, please. In this sense, it's important to underline that you have to drink moderately, and also always with meals. And this is very important. If you want to decrease the alcohol in blood, it's important to drink wine with meals. And this is another key of a healthy life. Next slide, please. In the PREDIMED, we study near 7,500 participants, and we divided in 3 groups. It was a randomized clinical trial, and 1/3 of the participants follow Mediterranean diet plus extra virgin olive oil, and another 1/3 follow Mediterranean diet plus nuts, a mix of almonds, walnuts, and hazelnuts, and the control group follow a low-fat diet, so no olive oil, no nuts, but no so much meat and so on. Next slide. And people drinks wine. But by choose was not a recommendation to drink that. And we saw that the people who follow the Mediterranean diet plus extra virgin olive oil and nuts has a 30% reduction of myocardial infarction, stroke, or cardiovascular death. And when we analyze which part of the diet exerts a protection, we found that between 50 and 20% of the effects of Mediterranean diet have to be attributed to wine, always with moderation. Next slide, please. In this sense, we also analyze mortality after a mean follow-up of 20 years. And we found, and we want to publish this nearly, so we have not published this data, that if you follow a healthy Mediterranean diet without wine or with wine decrease 50%, and this is not a small figure, mortality. So wine adds 50% effects on protection against mortality in the Mediterranean diet. Even the people eat a very healthy diet like Mediterranean diet. Next slide, please. When we analyze the difference between total wine, white wine, and red wine was somewhat healthier than wine, and Professor Alamuela will speak the difference of ethanol and polyphenols, and red wine is plenty of polyphenols and decrease all mortality in moderation and also cardiovascular disease when you drink in moderation red wine. Next slide, please. And when we analyze cancer, and this is a hallmark important in health, we saw that the people who drinks wine without a healthy diet was an increase of death by cancer. But if the people drinks wine on a healthy diet, like Mediterranean diet, was a decrease in cancer mortality. So it's very important diet to separate the right side to the wrong side in this case of cancer mortality. So it's very important to drink wine in moderation under the umbrella of the Mediterranean diet if you want to find out what is the best health for you. Next slide, please. And in the same study, we analyzed the incidence of breast cancer in women, and we saw that was a 60% reduction in the incidence of breast cancer when the woman followed Mediterranean diet that was inherent a moderate wine consumption and extra virgin olive oil. So again, wine under the umbrella of the Mediterranean diet and olive oil reduced the incidence of cancer versus a control diet that was a no healthy diet. Follow. Next slide, please. And this is the conclusions. We know that alcohol have two faces, and we have to be in the right side. It's very important to avoid excessive drinking, especially binge drinking in the weekend. But if you put wine in moderation and under the umbrella of a healthy diet like Mediterranean diet, you will reduce total mortality and the incidence of main chronic diseases like diabetes, myocardial infarction, neurological disease like Alzheimer, and so on. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Struth, for presenting the results of the PREDIMED program. Thank you very much, and we will be having some questions at the end. I would like to introduce now Professor Rosa Lamuela Raventos, also online. She's the director of the Institute for Research on Nutrition and Food Safety, and also an associate professor at the Department of Nutrition, Food Science and Gastronomy at the University of Barcelona. Welcome. Professor Lamuela Raventos, in your research, you highlight the role of polyphenols in brain and gut health. Could you please discuss in your presentation the potential impact of wine polyphenols on mental health, but also cognitive function when consumed in moderation? And also the same question to you, what do you mean by moderation? Thank you so much. The floor is yours.
Hello. Well, thank you very much for inviting me to participate in these interesting talks. Yes, if you can show my slides, please. Well, so today, I will focus my presentation. I will talk more about wine and cardiovascular or inflammatory effects that on brain. We are also studying the effect on brain, especially of polyphenols on brain. However, here, as we do not have enough time, I will focus more on the effects that we have observed on the anti-inflammatory effects that can also have an effect on brain. So next slide, please. Yes. Well, all of you, I know, you know this composition very well, no? That we have to consider that wine is mainly composed by water. Water is the main component of wine. It's almost 86%. Alcohol is around, depending on the wine, no? But it's around 11%. However, what happens that alcohol is the component of wine that limits the amount that we can drink, no? And moreover, we have some of minor compounds that probably related to health, they are not so important. However, if we now go to the next slide. Yes, we go to the next slide. In wine, in white wine and in red wine, we have other components besides water and ethanol. Like, for example, here we have what could be in one glass of white wine or in a glass of red wine. For example, in a glass of red wine, we have that both of them are very rich, white and red. Both are very rich in tartaric acid that is very specific of grapes and very specific of wine in our food. So it's really a very good, like we'll see, as a very good biomarker of if the people is consuming wine, because the same amount is, and it's really high amount, because this would be around a gram of tartaric acid. Compare, for example, with other phenolics, ascalic acid or resveratrol, it's almost 100 times or 1,000 times. And in white wines, we have also this compound, tartaric acid, that could be the first one. After, we can see also there are phenolics, but the way we make wines, that there is not white wines, there are not so much contact with the skins, they have less phenolic compounds than red wines. Next slide, please. Yes, and what we do, we observe that tartaric acid, we were using tartaric acid as biomarker of in old amphoras from old Egyptian residues. So what we thought, why not use tartaric acid that is very specific of grape and wine as biomarker as the people has consumed wine? Because most of the studies that has been done on alcohol, on alcoholic drinks, on wine or beer, they are usually based on food frequency questionnaires. And food frequency questionnaires is a good thing, but it's not totally reliable. The most reliable thing is to have a biomarker, because then you are sure that these people have had this food, this drink, or whatever they want to measure. So we use tartaric acid as a biomarker. We analyze it in urine. We develop a specific method with using very specific instrumentation to quantify it in urine. Next slide. What we observed, this was published in the European Heart Journal this year, 2025. What we observed that if we go to the consumption, that will be 12 to 36 glasses of wine, that will be the fourth one. What we observe is 50% of reduction on the cardiovascular risk. This was in the pre-med population, in the population that Dr. Struck has been describing before. It was really a light to moderate, with only light to moderate consumption, that is half a glass or a glass of wine every day, you have a really, really very good protection. If you increase this amount, we do not observe this protection. So really the protection is usually with moderation, always with moderation. However, we wanted to go further and to see why we can attribute this to the wine consumption. Next slide. And what we measure is biomarkers of inflammation. And in that case, we look one molecule that is named is SCAM, that is very related with inflammation, because we have to think that these biomarkers related to inflammation, usually when you age or when you have more cardiovascular risk, they increase. So to decrease these components is very important for mortality, for cardiovascular health, for any chronic disease. So what we observed that there was a clear association between this molecule that is related to inflammation with the tartaric acid. And we went further, slide. And we also analyze resveratrol. Resveratrol is a compound that is not in high amount in wine. It's mostly present in red wine because it's coming from the skins, and red wine has more contact with the skins. But the good thing of this compound is that when it arrives to the gut, is metabolized by the microbiota, and it's form a compound that its name is dihydroresveratrol. And this is the one that is really observed in the human body, in the human blood and in the human urine. And when it arrives into the liver, it metabolizes to glucuronide and to sulfate, that is very typical of phenolic compounds. And what we did is also, we analyzed this compound in urine, and we tried to see if the amount that we saw in the urine, we could associate with a decrease also in inflammatory markers. Go ahead, next slide. And what we observe, that the people, this dihydroresveratrol glucuronide and this resveratrol sulfate at baseline in the pre-med study, and after 1 year of follow-up, what we observe is that the dihydroresveratrol metabolites are inversely associated with inflammation. So much resveratrol you have in urine, much or less inflammation you have in the body. So as conclusions, next slide. what we can say that we observe an inverse association between tartaric acid, that is, the amount is the same in white wine and in red wine, is related to this inflammatory market. And we observe an inverse association between dihydroresveratrol, that is mainly in red wines, and also inflammatory markers. Next slide. Yes, this is that we are a group of researchers that we are working a lot in polyphenols. Now we are more focused on polyphenols, microbiota effect, and brain health. This is our, and we are trying to be very active in media because we think that scientific people have to arrive to media to have like an impact to the society. And finally, to finish, thanks slide, John, I would like to thank all the organizations that are giving us enough money to carry out all these studies, because without the money, it's impossible to carry out. This has been funded mainly by public institutions that have supported that for these projects. Thank you very much. I am open to any question or any comment.
Thank you so much for this presentation and wide view on the polyphenols. I will gather some questions at the end, so thank you for staying with us. And I would like to give the floor to our last speaker of this panel, Pauline Vicard, co-founder and executive director of Areni Global. And Pauline, I also have two impossible questions for you. So the first one would be, what role can wine education play in helping consumer enjoy wine responsibly? And we discussed about moderation before. Of course, while understanding the health effects of moderation, and then how your organization, Areni Global, addresses misconceptions and stigma about moderate wine consumption in different markets and in the EU. The floor is yours.
All right, thank you. Well, Professor Schollier has already demonstrated that the impossible is possible, so I'll try to do my best. And before I answer your two key questions, I'd like to maybe go into two different roads. The first one is maybe to explain what Areni Global is, because we occupy quite a unique space in the world of wine. We are a think tank dedicated to the future of fine wine. So basically what it means is our job is to look at the major forces of change, be it environmental change, societal change, but also geopolitics, and look at how those changes impact the production, distribution, and consumption of fine wine. So we're based in London, technically not in Europe anymore, but we have partners and members in more than 25 countries. And actually to think about our action and to answer your question, Lorena, about what we need to do, we actually ask ourselves a very similar question to what's been asked of the panel today, which is, how can we safeguard and promote our food culture while encouraging more conscious consumption habits? And of course, this is, that's another way of asking your question of how can we win the battle using another language? And that's a crucial question. And I would like to thank MEP Herranz García and MEP Schneider for allowing us to debate this, because it's a very important one. And before I talk about the how we do that, I'd like to take a step back and actually answer the question of why we do it and why we should safeguard and promote the wine cultures in Europe. And the global title for this event was Europe Without Wine. And I think all of us in the panel were like, well, we really hope that's only a rhetorical questions, because that's something that is hard to imagine. And my fellow speakers have demonstrated brilliantly the importance of wine in Europe and how it's paramount and how it involves, influence and shapes our economies, local and national, our agricultures and our landscape as well. We haven't talked too much about the hospitality sector today, but that's something that we could have also talked about, because what would a restaurant be without wine and all of these places of conviviality that allow us to come together and cultivate this togetherness that we so desperately need in this moment of division and isolation. So we've asked ourselves that question quite a lot of time at Areni Global. Why does wine matter in Europe and beyond? Well, first of all, because it's delicious. I mean, you made such a poetic point about this, but most importantly, because for thousands of years, we've all, and all of us, I mean, you made such a good point in reminding us that it's not just the winemakers, it's all of us collectively that have decided and agreed on the fact that wine in moderation enhances the quality and the experience of our life. And the WHO itself states that, you know, health is not only the absence of disease, of course. But of course, as reminded by everyone here, wine contains ethanol, and the conversation around wine and health are very important. And so important, in fact, that they have guided the wine sector's action for the last 2 decades. So back to your question of the how now. How do we do to continue to responsibly promote the enjoyment of wine whilst reducing excess consumption, or winning the battle, if you prefer? Well, I suggest that we do that in 3 steps. And the first one is really important, but we continue what we are doing. So we continue to accompany our consumers. They all come to wine for very different reasons, but with very different motivation. And I might say that's very similar with spirits. They also comes with a very different history. And so our role is really to continue to help them understand the risk of excess consumption and what moderation means to them, again, on that question of definition, and equip them to take educated decisions. So I think education is really paramount to everything that we do. But education is, as you mentioned, Eric, and Oliver as well, it's not just about the consumer, it's also about the trade. So what we do is we continue to train each link of the wine's value chain from estate to table and give them the tool to communicate, to sell, and to serve alcohol responsibly. And I like to quote here the great work done by Wine in Moderation. I'm really glad that they're here with us today to equip our sector and beyond, because they've developed a range of tools in terms of communication, serving, and selling of wine, which is really impressive, and that has now been widely used by our industry. And again, we continue what we have been doing for many years now, because it works and because it shows in the numbers. So I've got 3 numbers to quote you today, just for the sake of time, but I could have chose more. And those numbers are measurable improvements on key health indicators that have been recorded by the WHO between 2010 and 2019 in 62 countries where they had available and compilable data. And so those numbers tell us that alcohol-related death fell by 20.2% globally, that alcohol-related morbidity declined by 17.4% worldwide, again, in that small period of 2010 to 2019. And alcohol consumption per capita and heavy episodic drinking that Professor told us about, too much drinking on the weekend, that also declined by 3.5% and 3.4% respectively, though more unevenly across regions. So again, first step of the strategy, we just continue to do what we're doing because it is working. The second step of this is we take our actions a step further. And I'm so happy that the notion of pleasure has been quoted many times before my speak, because for us, it is also a key lever to change. So we bring back the notion of pleasure, we bring back the notion of joy that can only come from moderate consumption. So bear with me as I explain this. We know 2 things from our work with Professor Chandon, who's a researcher at INSEAD, a top university in France. And what he tells us is that to change people's food habits, telling them that something is not good for their health doesn't work. Actually, it's more nuanced than that, is that it actually works for people that are already healthy and already moved by things like nutrition. So that works for them. But for the rest of people, which is the majority, that doesn't move the needle. So telling people that something is not healthy is not a good way if you want to influence behaviors and habits. And that's what at the center for us is in that question. What we also know, talking about pleasure is maximized by moderation, because pleasure is not a linear thing. It's not the sum of every spoonful of chocolate mousse. Christmas is coming, so my head is filled with chocolate. It's not, the sum of every spoonful of chocolate mousse or every sip of wine that makes total pleasure. Actually, it's the reverse. Pleasure, when you study the brain, is maximized within those first spoonfuls, and within those first sips. So everything that comes after, all the quantity that comes after that actually decrease the sum of overall pleasure. So if you think about it, there is no pleasure, there's no joy without moderation. And I find that it's an extremely positive message about moderation, because it doesn't only mean safeguarding against excess, it means enabling joy. And that's really key and central. So we continue to do what we're doing because education works. We take that a step further. And finally, that's my next step and my biggest wish is we bring back the nuance into the conversation, because it seems when it comes to wine and health that we are stuck in that false debate, that false dichotomy of sober versus drunk, of nothing versus excess. And that's not productive. But most importantly, that doesn't correspond to people's reality, to most people's reality of how they engage with wine. And one of the ways to bring back nuances into the conversation is actually having the conversation. So again, thank you very much for gathering us today. This is crucial. And this is also a call for people in the industry or not, but not to stay silent, not to be afraid of engaging in conversation. You reminded us that wine is the matter of producers, but also of the consumers and the people that drink it and enjoy it. And we know it's a complex one, and that is exactly the reason why we should talk about it. So in conclusion, the responsible path forward, and I think we all agree on this matter, is not to denigrate the product that has shaped our agriculture, our culture, and our shared meals for thousands of years. It is to champion what makes it special and makes it a source of pleasure and joy. To drink well, in the full meaning of the phrase, is to drink with attention, meaning to respect the product, the places it comes from, the people around the table, and oneself as well. This is not a debate of sober versus drunk. It is the debate between culture and reductionism. Like European culture itself, wine is many things at once. We've seen it today. That cannot and should not be reduced to a single message. It is a product of culture, science, and respect. So if health is more than the absence of disease, then culture is more than a lifestyle risk. So safeguarding our historic food and wine cultures and the responsible enjoyment they offer is crucial, as they play a vital role in our collective well-being and societal fabric. Thank you very much. So I guess to answer your question, what we do at Arini Global is do everything that favors those three steps. So continuing education, furthering education, taking the step further in the conversation around joy and pleasure, supported by science now that we understand more how pleasure works, but also allowing those space for conversation, because it's really important that it's not just one voice louder than other voices, and then we hear them all.
Thank you so much, Pauline, and thank you also your other panelists. Because of time, we are going to move into the next panel, but we will take questions at the end. So don't worry, if you still have a question for the three speakers, you can ask it in the end. So I would like now to move to a panel discussion. We have here MEPs present, so I would like to offer them the floor, but we also have a Mentimeter with a few questions for you that would actually start the debate, and then we can launch the questions. So maybe if the slide is ready and if you can prepare your phones. We have the first question. What would the world be without wine in Europe? And you can put there a word. Anything that you would like to say?
The QR code.
Yes, the QR code is over there.
Oh.
Yes, you can also say the word for sure. We already a few questions there and answers. Two. We can. I can. Maybe. Gray. Yes. I will give you the floor, so.
You can put.
Yes.
Write it inside.
So we have a few words in there appearing. Yeah, so maybe I will start this panel discussion with MEP Eniko Giori from Patriots for Europe. I already have a question for you, but maybe you can also say your word about the world without wine. How is wine consumption evolving in Central Eastern Europe, and where does Hungary fit in that picture? Welcome and thank you for joining.
Thank you so much. First of all, thank you for the initiative. Thank you, Christine and Esther. With Esther, we work very hard in the framework of the wine intergroup. She's the co-chair, I'm the co-vice chair of that parliamentary formation, and I'm very much pleased to be able to work with many of you and have a true cooperation, and that we have the wine package passed last week. Esther was negotiating it. I think it's an important step in the right direction. Well, I'm bringing in to this discussion the voice of Central Europe, which is not very well known, but from the Tokaj wine, I suppose all of you have heard, and I'm extremely proud of it. And in Hungary, wine and wine culture is part of our national identity. So we had a very poetic presentation here. I will not be in that height, but still, it's strictly woven into our national identity and statecraft, and it's impossible to tell the story of Hungary without the wine culture. Even in our national anthem, in the second verses, we have a reference to the Tokaj wine, saying that the drops of Tokaj nectar, which means that, well, Hungarians would not be able to imagine life without wine, not just the Tokaj wine. And many important authors like Beethoven or Goethe have clear references to the Tokaj wine, just to make you understand how important for my country it is. And we have a recognition of this Tokaj wine region from dating back to 1738, and it even has a UNESCO heritage. And not by chance that Louis XIV called it the king of wines and the wine of kings. So we have a very heavy and very nice heritage on wine. And our problems at home are very similar to the problems of the wine sector in Western Europe, but we have, of course, much smaller concerning the average wine vineyard and the production. Even in Hungary, we have experiencing the fall of the consumption, maybe not 30% as the EU average, but 25%. And we are concentrating the government, including the producers' organizations, to increase and convince, especially the young people, and teach them the moderate wine consumption. A lot has been said on that, and I was very pleased to hear experts, because, and we know this in this parliament, how difficult it is to fight the bad reputation which has been brought in by, sorry to say, the left and many groups in this house, saying that practically if you drink a glass of wine, you will die. We have that culture now, which for me is an anti-culture. And with Esther, we had the fight in the last semester concerning the cancer intergroup. Someone may remember that the closing report was clearly stating, making it equivalent, if you drink wine, you will die. And we managed to have an intergroup cooperation, sensible people, rational people, that it was a nonsense, and we managed to defeat them, but the danger is with us. I don't want to take for too long because we have many speakers, but what we are still doing, concentrate on the autochthon wines, because we don't want to be great in Chardonnay or in or other well-known international wines, but we concentrate on our own traditions like Furmint, like Harslevelu, which do not exist in other parts, and we are concentrating efforts on that. Major problem, beside the average problems. We, just for a few months, the Flavescens Doré has been strongly present in Hungary. We It's not that it was born there, you know very well, but we got it from the south, from Slovenia and Croatia, and we are concentrating a lot of effort on fighting it. But this is a typical issue, the plagues, where we need a cross-border cooperation. That's why we had in the wine intergroup a written question to the Commission. We were talking to both Commissioner Hansen and I was talking to Commissioner Vajheri as well on this issue, because here what we need as an immediate joint EU monitoring, plant health support, fast-track approval of actives and products, automatic grabbing and replanting with up to 100% support. If we don't do it and we don't get a quick help, we will lose a very important percentage of our wines and the wine culture and the future. An entire sector is in danger. So I very much hope that I can count on the solidarity of the entire sector and the entire European sector to be able to fight against this extremely negative phenomena. Thank you so much. And at 5, I will have to leave you because I have to vote on Mercosur safeguard in the INTA committee.
Thank you so much for your contribution. And I would like to move now to the other speakers. So we allow more time also for your questions before 5. So Ms. Christine Schneider, thank you so much for joining and supporting this event and organizing it. I do have 2 questions. Maybe we can start with what other legislative proposals will be decisive for the future of European wine sector?
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much for organizing, and that let me start with a great thank to Luisella, because she took the idea when we had a glass of wine at a wine event. And the background was that some days before WHO try to find against wine consume. We know from the Baker report and all the things from the anti-alcohol lobby. And we talk about it, and I said we need more events where we really describe the difference between a very unhealthy consumption and a moderate wine consume. And if I have a wish for the new year, I wish that the anti-alcohol lobbyism tried in the same way than that we had a completely few and a little bit compare scientific-based data and not only say to be against. That was the wish. So thank you so much for Luisella. And to your question, I must thank a second person, because very often we heard that the European Union is too slow, decisions take too many time. But today is a person in the room who managed a very, very important file and who closed it last week. It is my colleague Esther with the wine package. He made it in such a great way, because between Germany and Spain are different, between France and Italy are different. But she had to fight very hard with the Danish presidency. You know, all Denmark is a very big wine region. And they had ideas where I'm so thankful, García, for you, Esther, for your work, because it was so great. And you fight so much for our all wine region, not only for Spain, for all. And you make so great job. Thank you so much for this, for us all. And when we close one chapter successful, we have to look in the future and what are the big challenges in the future. In the European Union, we drive a lot of omnibus at the moment. And one omnibus will the food and feed omnibus, and there will all questions about plant protection inside. One of the biggest challenge, we heard it also from my colleague, that our wine growers or agriculture areas completely have the toolbox, and we need the toolbox. We need in the future also pesticides, and so it's very important what will be inside in the omnibus about plant protection. The second thing is about alcohol policy, and I'm sure We know that we get a report from our auditor, a court of auditor about the Baker report. And I believe the left side will also use this report against to try to stop promotional or advertising of our wine culture, because we all know in the Baker report, the warning label was the first step. The next step is in the GMO and in the CAP reform to say no more money, official money for wine promotion. We all know this, and wine promotion is not only a promotion for a beautiful beverage, it's a promotion, we all know it, for our home countries, for culture, for feeling, for our roots. And so I think this would be the second challenge, and also how we can stabilize the income of our wine growers, of our wine farmers, because this also means supporting of our rural areas. And then we are completely in the discussion about the CAP reform and about EU funding. And these are very big challenges. But if I look around and I see powerful women, we will fight this challenge and we will win for our wine regions. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Indeed, I agree. I will go to the next powerful woman on this panel discussion. We already heard your important role in this wine package that was recently approved. And of course, it was amid debates on health, culture, and sustainability. In your opinion, how does the legislation aim to safeguard Europe's wine sector, support rural communities, and of course, encourage a mindful consumption?
Thank you very much. I want to start with an answer to my colleague, Christine. It was, thank you very much first, but it was not me, it was a team. In my office, with the colleagues from the EPP, the other colleagues from the other political parties in the parliament, the shadow rapporteurs, and the people of the sector who have given us a lot of ideas in this fight. So finally, we have to fight very, very hard with the Danish presidency. As you know, it's a very well-known knowers of the wine sector. And but finally, we did it. And I had to tell you the truth. Without the support of our Commissioner Herranz, things were very, very worst. So thanks to all, because finally we did it. And now we have to keep on with the fight with the next reform of the CAP. You know that we have a report on the MCO, and it's important to get all the steps we have done, keep on the next reform of the CAP and the CMO report. And answering your question here, and answering your question, I have thought, no, I have to, I want to talk, no, I don't know if, no, okay, yes, sorry. And I have an idea that the consumer's protection is very important, but we don't have to make a confusion or not to be confused with the good info given to the consumers, with the new laws we have against alcohol sector in the different countries. I know that the labeling has to be very clear and very exactly. Consumers has to know what they are drinking at all moment. But we have to, I have received a lesson from the colleague, from the Madame, I can't see your name. It was you. You have said that education is very important, and it's true. But with the new laws we have in different countries here in the European Union, we have a problem how to show young people start with the wine. I remember when I was a little girl, a young girl, I start at home learning how to drink wines with my father and my mother. And now you have to wait until 18 years old, and it's very, very late. Perhaps with the new products we have without alcohol, wines without alcohol, or reduces alcohol, we could start in the 50s, no? But it's very difficult for a young people learn how to have wine properly if they don't start at home. And we have a promise, or we have promised to get better the life of the Europeans from this parliament, and it had to take part health and at the same time happiness. And it's very difficult not to take part, not to be happy without, or how to be happy without spirits, wines, good foods, quality foods. And I think that wine is part of this. And in the wine sector, we have done an effort with the labeling. We have get what the sector asked for about labeling inside Europe and in the third countries. But inside Europe, I think we have done a very good, I am waiting with esperanza, how to say, hopeless, hopeless, the proposal that comes from the European Commission. They are working in a delicate act, and I think that they are going to have a good answer. And with a reduce on low alcohol wines, I think it will be a good window for the future in order to not to lose consumers at the time we are losing now.
Can I answer the question? Or
Sorry?
Can we react to what's been said?
Yes, sure, please go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I just wanted to say, and thank you so much for talking about transmission, and that's of course essential. In one of the studies that we are doing currently, and I need to say that it's for fine wine consumers, so we're looking at people who buy the higher end of the price segment in wine. But we're doing that study, which is called New Consumers, New Narrative. So we want to understand the current wine consumers of today. What's the first point of contact of wine? And can we identify patterns that would lead them to engage with fine wine? And we've done that study in 6 different markets. So Paris, London, New York, Shanghai, Hong Kong, and Singapore. And one of our hypotheses of the study would be that young people will engage differently whether or not wine is part of their family tradition. So, Paris, the assumption was everyone in Paris will have wine around them, when in Shanghai they won't. And actually, it's quite interesting because when it comes to that segment, and I can't conclude for all segments of wine, they actually do engage in a similar way if they've got access to 3 things. The first thing is access to money, because we're talking about the higher end segment. But the second one is access to education. And the third one is access to community. So actually, it doesn't really matter if it's the family that's the first point of contact for wine, as long as they've got access to community who drink wine in moderation and in a responsible way. So it's not, in Europe, it's probable that most people will be in producing countries, but even if they're not from that, there's a way, and that's through community.
Thank you so much, Pauline. I don't know if you want to react.
I'd like to talk, just coming back to the point of low wine. I believe it's a total mistake. It's a ridiculous point. Wine is with alcohol, and wine without alcohol is a disaster because they replace alcohol by sugar, and it's a chemical transformation. It's a really big problem for health. And in my mind, I try to think about that things, and when I'm talking with wine producer, we're going on the no alcoholic wine. I say, don't make wine and then remove the alcohol. Start from grape juice, varietal grape juice, with lower sugar, because the next problem is not alcohol, is the sugar. Sugar I don't understand why Europe is not working against sugar. It's a lobby, probably a very good lobby.
Excess sugar.
But excess sugar, added sugar, excess sugar in everything. And the non-alcoholic wine, it's a terrible beverage, because I prefer drink Coca-Cola than a wine without alcohol, because it's no taste and only sugar. And we don't have to promote that things. We have to promote grape juice, varietal grape juice, with a reducing amount of sugar, and give the taste of the grapes. It could be a good thing. And also for the new peewee juice, because it works very well. If you take grapes juice from Muscaris or things like that, it's beautiful. It's easy to drink, but with low level of sugar, it's better.
Thank you so much, Eric. I think you've launched a very nice debate. I still have one question before our MEPs leave, because they will need to leave. I would like to bring back the idea of education and dialogue between stakeholders, and we are now here gathered thanks to the European Food Forum. So how do you see the European Food Forum as a tool for education and to bring this debate, whether it's sugar or wine, or how can we bring the stakeholders at the table, and how can we educate the young people? Thank you so much. I don't know who wants to.
If you don't mind, because I have to leave, I go to Mercosur as well. Well, I think you are doing a very, very good work. It's important for me that not only in the European institutions, but in the countries of the European Union, could have a very good culture to know very well our produce from the country. The geographical indication products are part of our culture, our history, our tradition, and our way of life. So perhaps it will be very useful if you have a very big presence in the schools, in the universities, in all the knowledge nets we have in the different European countries, the European Union. And if we can help in any way, please tell us. We will be very happy to contribute to your presence in all the countries around Europe. And I have to leave. I'm so sorry. I can't do anything else here. But fortunately, you have the best one, Christine, and it will be very, very, very good.
Thank you.
Better than me.
Thank you so much for your contribution today and for joining this conversation and for your opinion. Thank you. So maybe you would like to also get back to this question briefly, or should I?
I can underline. I have maybe a other point of view on alcohol-free wines, because I think we don't should let this market for our other beverages. I think we should also contribute to this market and take the possibility. I think the important point is the question about education, and to give the information to the consumer that he can make a responsible decision. And this is the work the European Food Forum since the beginning tried to do, to bring everybody together to the table to discuss these points. And I always bring an example from my youth. I have the same situation than Esther at home. My grandfather was a wine farmer, and I grew up in his vineyards, and I learned in the family how to behave together with alcohol. So no bans, to have all information. And the reason I started to smoke with 16 was because my parents always said, don't do this. This is very dangerous and unhealthy. And when you are young, you want to try. And so I think the wrong way is to make bans. The right way is to inform, to show the consequence, and to have an informed consumer. And this is the work we make as European Food Forum. So I'm very happy to be a part of this community. Thank you so much today for your discussion and your scientific-based input that we can prove it again in the discussion of the European Parliament. Thank you so much from my side.
Thank you so much for the discussion. I would like to thank you all speakers and all panelists. Thank you for being here and give all your views and different angles to this, enrich this conversation. Thank you so much, Luisela and European Food Forum for organizing. And I do have a few things to remind you. So if you would like to become a member of the European Food Forum, you have here the wonderful team, so you can talk to them or write to the info europeanfoodforum.eu. And also don't miss the next events. So there are 2 events in January and 3 events in February. So already building trust for protein diversification on the 28th of January, and is food a solution for the EU cardiovascular plan for a better European life, the 27th of January, also hosted by 2 MEPs. And then in February, you have very different events in February. So EFF means the best chef in the world, navigating US tariffs and balancing welfare and competitiveness. So very diverse, very wide. Please check their website and stay tuned and register. Thank you so much for everything. And I hope you leave this room as we do, very hopeful and at least with lots of information on this very, very challenging but also hopeful conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lorena. Thank you.